Welcome to Chapter 15.3, The Struggle for North America. In the 1600s, the French, Dutch, English, and Spanish competed for the lands in North America. By 1700, though, France and England dominated large parts of the continent. Their colonies differed from one another in terms of language, government, resources, and society. In 1534, Jacques Cartier explored and claimed for the French much of eastern Canada, which they called New France. But eventually, France's empire stretched from Quebec to the Great Lakes and down to the Mississippi River in Louisiana. However, a permanent French settlement was not established until 1608 in Quebec. Harsh Canadian winters discouraged settlers, and many abandoned farming for more profitable fur trapping and fishing. In the late 1600s, the French king, Louis XIV, wanted greater revenue or income from taxes, and so he appointed officials to manage the economic activities in North America, and he sent soldiers and even more settlers. In the early 1700s, while New France's population remained quite small, England's colonies expanded along the Atlantic coast. Jamestown in Virginia, the first permanent English colony, was established in 1607. In 1620, Pilgrims, or English Protestants who rejected the Church of England, landed at what became known as Plymouth, Massachusetts. They wrote a compact or agreement, which we call the Mayflower Compact. It set guidelines for governing their colony. In the 1600s and 1700s, the English created additional colonies. Many were commercial ventures or havens for religious groups, and English monarchs exercised control through royal governors. Yet, English colonists enjoyed a greater degree of self-government than did the French and the Spanish colonists. They had their own representative assemblies that could advise the governor, and they could decide on local issues. During the 1700s, England and France emerged as powerful rivals. By 1754, the French and Indian War erupted in North America and then spread to other parts of the world, and by 1756, it was known as the 7 Years' War. The British and colonial troops eventually captured New France's capital, Quebec, and although the war dragged on, the British ultimately prevailed. In 1763, the Treaty of Paris ended with a worldwide conflict. France surrendered Canada and other North American possessions to Britain. Its Louisiana territories passed to Spain. France and England followed Spain in settling North America. Though their hopes for gold and the passage to Asia were not really met, they did turn a profit in these new colonies. By 1700, the two nations controlled huge parts of North America, and their colonies were very different from those of Spanish America. France claimed huge amounts of land in North America during the 1500s. The nation called these claims New France. Jacques Cartier explored the coastline in 1534, and he discovered the St. Lawrence River. This is the St. Lawrence River, and French missionaries, following the explorers, attempted to try to convert the Native Americans to Christianity. Despite the huge French claims that were explored by French trappers, the settlement in this area by the French was extremely low. The first permanent settlement in this area was in 1608, and it was in the Quebec area. So the farming was really, really hard because it was very cold up here in this territory, Canadian territory, and but it was perfect for fur trapping because the animals would grow very nice fur pelts because of the cold weather. So and fur was in high demand. Fashion was all about wearing fur in Europe, and so fur trading became very, very lucrative. Louis XIV wanted to increase revenue from New France and make it profitable in the 1600s. So he sent many more settlers and soldiers to the New World, and he forbade Protestants from settling in New France. So it was mainly Catholic. Partly as a result, the population of New France was much smaller than that of the English colonies. The English colonies were established along the Atlantic seaboard, and they were founded in the 1600s, and the first permanent settlement was in Jamestown, Virginia, which was founded in 1607. This settlement was organized by an English company that wanted to gain wealth from the New World. So it was a joint stock company. And the settlers there were much more interested in finding gold than in making gardens and growing food, etc. And the first early settlers of Jamestown died of starvation. But Jamestown began to thrive once the colonies started to grow and export tobacco, which was a native crop that was becoming popular in Europe. The Pilgrims arrived in 1620 up here in what is today modern-day Massachusetts, and they were from England, and they were Protestants who had rejected the Church of England, which was far too Catholic for them. They were seeking religious freedom, and they set sail from Plymouth, England, on the Mayflower. While they were still on their ships, though, the Pilgrims got together and formed a government contract, which they called the Mayflower Compact, after the ship that they were on. This compact, or agreement, set up guidelines for how they were going to govern the new colony. The Mayflower Compact was an important step towards self-government, which set up a long heritage of self-government within the New World. Many Pilgrims died during these early days in the Plymouth colony. Native Americans taught them how to grow corn and to fish and how to survive the harsh winters. And eventually, new waves of English Protestants arrived and founded the Massachusetts Bay Colony. The English established additional colonies in the 1600s and 1700s for various reasons. New York and Virginia were both commercial ventures. They were organized for profit. Then you have Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Maryland, and these were religious colonies. They were founded to harbor religious dissenters. And then you had Georgia and South Carolina, which were gifts from the English king to his loyal supporters, and they became much more plantation-oriented. The English colonists learned to create wealth by using native resources. The people in the New England area built fishing, timber, and shipbuilding industries. Those in the middle colonies, which we consider these colonies to be middle colonies, grew grain, and those that settled in the South were focused on cash crops such as rice or tobacco, and they developed the plantation culture that we know of today using a lot of slave labor. The English colonies had large degrees of self-government and autonomy. This grew out of the English tradition, which had a parliament and gave rights to citizens to temper the power of the king. The colonists expected the same rights and freedoms as English citizens, and each colony had its own representative assembly that would advise the royal governor, which was appointed by the king. European powers in North America began to fight in the 1600s to protect their interests and to try to expand them. So there's two main rivals for North America. They were France and England. And this eventually led to the French and Indian War, which erupted in 1754. The French and Indian War was basically a part of a worldwide conflict known as the 7 Years' War. And in this war, France won a few victories early on, but eventually the British took over the beating of France. So the tide turned in 1759 when British troops captured Quebec, which was the capital of New France. In 1763, they had a Treaty of Paris, which officially ended the war, and basically it established British dominance of North America. But France also regained sugar-producing islands in the Caribbean and a slave-trading outpost in Africa, and the British had to give those back after what they had taken during the war.